Hello, viewers of the YouTube channels of eFlight Garden Talk and eFlight Expo. Welcome to the second eFlight Garden Talk. Today we have a very interesting company here, which is the leading company of electric aviation over the last 10 years. Company from Slovenia and a company which has realized more projects in the last year than most of the other companies around the world. A company which did win the Green Flight Challenge from NASA, which was in 2011, with the largest prize ever given in history of aviation. And we have the honor to have Ivo Boscarol, CEO and founder of Pipistrel, and Tine Tomaciz, CTO and Director of R&D at Pipistrel Vertical Solutions. Welcome here at the eFlight Garden Talk. How did Corona affect the business of Pipistrel Group in general? Because especially with China, where you have had a lot of activities, I suppose it's from the beginning difficult, as China, it's where the difficulty started.
Well, Pipistrel is lucky that it has companies in different continents. So when the problems in China started, we have learned a lot how to protect ourselves. And we protected, let's say, the business we have in Slovenia and Italy in the way that we were almost no affected. We haven't lost a single day. We were able to reorganize the production, to reorganize the material flow. We organized the deliveries. So the production had no effect. Same also design and certification process. Of course, in China were, let's say, some months of quietness, but China recovered the first. And then also now when, let's say, in the other parts of the world, there is the strongest crisis. We are receiving orders almost like normal. I must say in June, we have received more orders than past June in 2019. And in the most affected countries like US, Argentina, Uruguay, and this part of the world. So I can say that it was not really a big effect.
Okay, how is where are you in China right now? Is the production in China started? When will it start?
No, we had quite a long delay. Now the building process restarted recently, so we don't have the factory finished yet at all. So I believe realistically is in the next year. Okay.
And first would be the Pipistrel electric Pipistrel Velis, or which aircraft will be the first you produce there?
Alpha Electro.
Alpha Electro, okay. Then next question I have, how many people are working at all the Pipistrel group altogether?
250 in Europe and another 14 in China.
Okay, and can you describe how this is divided by, let's say, development in Pipistrel Vertical Solutions and, for example, the production in Italy, or is this a general figure?
Yeah, I can tell you that we have about 80 or 85 engineers in research, development, and certifications, and the other are in production, prototyping, divided between the companies in Slovenia and in Italy.
Is it correct what I read that in Pipistrel Vertical Solutions is doing now the R&D work for the whole group, or is there still R&D in Pipistrel and R&D in Pipistrel Vertical Solutions?
No, so in Pipistrel DO we have now all the logistic we have a production of some type of aircraft. We have the part 145, so complete repair and maintenance and after sales support. We have the part of prototyping, and the Pipistrel Vertical Solution has, let's say, management of the group, corporate services, has research development, certification, and prototyping.
Okay.
In Italy, we have the production.
To the Italy and the fixed-wing aircraft, we will come a little bit later.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Tina. My question is, as Pipistrel has been developing quite fast and has been rolling out new products, so how Pipistrel view the advantages and the disadvantages of its identity and especially location as a Slovenian company, especially in eVTOL product development competition, because it seems now that lots of eVTOL companies are competing for talents, for human resources, and for investments. So for example, our talents from Europe and even from other parts of the world are willing to come to Slovenia to work and bring their families to Slovenia. And how do Pipistrel coordinates research works across Europe and in the world? Or would Pipistrel consider to set up research facilities outside of Slovenia?
So I will start a few years back. Actually, Slovenia as the micro location has never had strong aerospace educational background. There is no educational facilities as in terms of aerospace universities nearby. So we always had this challenge. And we've embarked on an interesting approach where also the composition of the development team is not just aerospace engineers. So we have disciplines coming from mechanical, electrical, physics, mathematics, very diverse field of science and engineering technology branches. And only a portion is let's say, purebred aeronautical engineers. There has been many relocations. In Pipistrel Vertical Solutions, about 1/3 of the staff has been, and I had to use this word, imported. So relocated to here, either by themselves or their families. A lot of people came as single individuals, got married here, established families. So it is a location that is lucrative for the lifestyle and the cost and the expenses associated to the living standard. So we are very close to nature. So people who value nature, they will feel right at home in here. We don't know things like traffic jams and typical issues or challenges that one has in more developed, let's say, urbanistic areas that are typically closer to where aerospace university centers are. That being said, to me, development of airplanes has always been a global affair. You have to keep your eyes open. Whoever will just do things locally, even if this is the Silicon Valley and you only work inside a 100-mile area, you will not have a competitive product because you simply disregard what is going around you. And yes, we do partner around, so it's not a secret. Honeywell is one of the partners we work with. A more prominent one, but there is many others scattered across the globe from Japan, China, Korea, Southeastern Asia, Europe dominantly, America, as well as the South American continent for materials. So yes, we are physically located here, but I would say that involvement is global. And if it will be necessary to offset and establish a center somewhere, because this makes sense for talent or connection to other industries, we've always been open to that. So especially, I mean, even this period of COVID-19 and the whole work from home situation has taught us a few lessons in how we could invoke different talents from different places, but there is no replacement for teamwork at one location where ideas actually are springboarded to much higher values. So I hope this answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
But by the way, Tina, where are you, and Ivo, where are you sitting right now? In Slovenia, or are you already traveling again? As I know you were traveling a lot over the last years.
Oh, no, Slovenia. We are actually now in Pipistrel Vertical Solutions.
Okay, good. So yeah, the first block I would like to talk about is the e-motor and propulsion system, which recently has been certified. So there are several questions we have on this subject. First would be the engine certification, which under which part it is certified. It's part 21, part 23, or is there a special engine category for LSA?
So the engine is certified according to part 21, which makes the product usable in multiple categories, okay? The certification basis is mixed. It takes some foundation from part 22 and VLA, because in EASA, these were the categories which first permitted electric propulsion. Willy, you know the Antares project,
yes.
And then several others. So we had to make sure that all of the requirements from back then were encompassed as well. And there is a big special condition, which is a mix between EASA Eco 18, E19, which is for light sport, as well as the upcoming E19, which is generic for part 23, eVTOL, and all of that. And this is baked into the design. So the initial type certificate as it stands today basically covers all of the applications until part 23 level 1 that require permanent motorization, okay? So this is a motor that can operate the entire time. It's not like on a glider where for the first 10 minutes it works and then you glide. So that's one of the things. And we anticipate to broaden the scope to include also other categories. CS eVTOL, as soon as the rules are frozen, we will definitely be increasing the scope to that. At the moment, the motor can be used on every possible category here in Europe that permits installations of electric motors. So the scope of the TC is as wide as it can be, okay? The only thing which this machine will most likely never be is used on tilt rotor applications, just because of the physical properties of the output shafts. So when it's used for VTOL, it could be for multicopters or lift plus cruise type of arrangements, not for tilts. Tilts have their own intrinsic requirements for shaft loads and gyroscopic loads, which this design may not support with larger propellers, possibly with smaller ones, yes, but it's not universal. So this is kind of what the current design covers. I hope it answers your question.
This answers the question perfectly. The next one is adding to this, because we will have later perhaps some talks on the eVTOL side. Does do you use your motor also in your eVTOL?
So we have in-house designs that we will be unveiling in a few weeks. So stand by. That will utilize this exact same motorization, correct?
Okay. Is there any cooperation with other VTOL manufacturers? As I know you want to sell the motor also to other manufacturers on the fixed wing side, but are you also working with VTOL manufacturers?
So we have NDAs, but I can confirm yes.
Okay.
Not only VTOL, there is inquiries coming from airship segments, conventional takeoff and landing electric, DEP installations. So you may have heard the US now has come up with certain projects, I will not name them, that discuss utilization of extremely short takeoff and landing aircraft. We may be talking with some or all of them, just for transparency. So indeed, OEMs or the startups, developers have identified that this motor, because it is type certified, shortens their path to certification. You know, simply they don't have to do the same degree of testing that they would have to do if they took some other design. There is still some integration testing needed, absolutely. I will just give you an example. So if you have an arrangement that has multiple motors in the proximity, so like one next to each other, the vehicle developer would have to show that if the motor disintegrates in some way because of a bird strike or fatigue or what have you, it doesn't kill the neighboring motor as well. So this is an installation thing. and you have to do certain things, maybe a shield or maybe protect the motor somehow. So that the type certificate is not answering all the questions, because also at Pipistrel we cannot foresee all the installation options, but it shortens the time to certification by 80%, maybe even 95% in cases that use, let's say, more simple installations in the nose or on the wing or on the tail. So it's definitely good value for people who would employ this motorization.
Concerning the installation, do you have sure, when it's in a VTOL, there will be multiple propulsions, distributed propulsion. Are there also distributed propulsion projects using these motors on the fixed wing side?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. But you can't disclose due to NDAs, I suppose, or can you disclose something more?
Not yet. Not yet. We have, you know, that we have always been very professional in who we disclose, and like the recent one, let's say from the surveillance segment, the customer, the American SOCOM, the Special Operations Agency, unveiled this now in May, but we have been doing it from 2014. And we did not disclose. So I think that within this year and next year, there will be some announcements or not. We don't control this. You know, some people prefer to keep it low key because they may have investors that hear a different story than what you and I hear. But yes, I can definitely confirm that there is high interest for this exact motor in a distributed electric propulsion arrangement for non-VTOL.
Okay. On the beginning, the MRAX motor, it was based on an MRAX motor. Now the certification is done by Pipistrel. Is this motor you're using still, let's say, an MRAX motor, or is this a Pipistrel motor with MRAX parts, or how does this work together?
We have to be completely transparent here in a full understanding. What is certified is an engine. This is a combination of the electric motor as well as the power electronics and some other small parts which take care of installation, cooling, monitoring, sensors, and these kind of things. So you can look at it as a firewall forward package. Okay, so it's just the electric motor. MRAX is one of the development partners. So when you see the motor, you will recognize MRAX parts, absolutely. There are good quality parts. The motor, however, is different and way improved in terms of robustness and durability from what MRAX is selling by themselves. It also has features built in that MRAXs simply do not have, connected to, I will just name a few, lightning strikes, super high temperature, super low temperature behavior. So frozen motors, as part of the certification, you have to show that even if you have a frozen motor, minus 40 degrees centigrade, you have to be able to start rotating it without damage. So it's a high challenge. And the bearing case, remember me saying VTOL applications and this and that, the bearing case is also entirely different, as is the cooling. So roughly speaking, and this is off the record, what remains of the MRAX is the magnets and the windings and certain internal caging. About 60% of the motor is entirely different when we are talking about the motor itself. The power electronics are proprietary and developed from scratch. They originated from the Alpha Electro project, but are much different. They are now HIRF, so high intensity radio frequency, and lightning strike proof, as well as crash worthy. So the parts are not the same as in Alpha Electro. You could say they are like one generation more modern. And because, back to your question, they can be utilized also in Part 23 aeroplanes, there is a different degree of reliability that one has to showcase. I'm not saying that Alpha Electro was not reliable. I'm just saying that nobody knows how reliable that system actually was because it was never put through the same kind of a test. So there is a difference between flight safety and airworthiness. So this one really has demonstrated behaviors, and effectively it is as good as a Continental, Rykoming, or a Rotax in behavior and how it reacts to the airframe and how it reacts to weather and contamination and rain and this and that. So like the whole package is completely rain-proof. You can fly this in any weather. Yeah, so it is a different design. Huh? It is not taking the MRAX or the Alpha Electro through the certification process. Off the record, the MRAX as is, and we tried, does not survive all of the certification tests. So it's still a good motor for what it does, but it is not covering all of the envelope. You have to know that type certified basically means as good as previous solutions or better. And this is not only on the electric side. Huh? So it has to be as good, as reliable, as robust as a Rotax or a Lyco or a turbine. So it's a very interesting thing. I hope this answers the question. And when you will see a Velis Electro motor up close, there is also an MRAX inscription on the front part of the motor, because this is a part of the motor that they actually produce as a manufacturing supplier. So there's nothing to hide. It's all transparent. But it is not the same part number.
Tine, perhaps?
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think actually that answers a lot of people's curiosity, because many people, when we see the MRAX logo, they will have some kind of discretion. So that definitely answers lots of people's curiosity. Just two quick questions. One is, Ivo, when you talk about weatherproof, what kind of qualification or level is that IP, for example, is like IP68 type of qualification, or a different type of, how you qualify weatherproof?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because the answer is in a combination of environmental standards for aviation. DO 160 defines what you do for the mechanical components and non-exposed electrical components. Yeah? So there is a definition of what is moderate rain. So that's 8 millimeters per hour of rain accumulation, as well as salt spray, humidity, fungus growth, and these things. But since this is electrical equipment, we also have to qualify according to IP ratings. Okay, and the applicable IP50 rating is 54 at minimum. So it goes up to 67 on power electronics, but the motor itself is 54. So it meets both regimes. So as if this is industrial equipment or electrical equipment that could also be utilized in a house, a boat, or a vehicle, a car. But alongside, we had to do DO 160 testing as well. And this is where lightning strike and electromagnetic disturbance and vibration comes from. As an example, water sealing on the motor, if you just do IP ratings, it doesn't take vibration into account. But you know that there is vibration on the aeroplane coming from the motor, turbulence, maneuvering, different things. So we had to do IP testing under vibration situations, like on a real test bench. So it's the sum of both worlds, IP as well as DO 160G.
Yep, that's a perfect answer. Thank you, Ivo. My next question, quick question is, you mentioned that the motor has to demonstrate its capability at minus 40 Celsius degrees. So does that only apply to the motor or engine system, or does that have to apply for the whole electric propulsion system, including BMS and especially battery? The reason why I'm asking this question is, as far as I know, and or from what I've learned or heard from the battery manufacturers, the current batteries they provide the kind of specification requirements for car and even for aerospace application do not meet this minus 40 Celsius requirement. They only have to meet the minus 20 or 25 Celsius, I believe.
A very good question. Yes, it is across all of the powertrain components, but I will answer very specifically. For the engine part, it is definitely that. So you can operate it, no restrictions. On the battery side, minus 40 goes for the startup, okay? There is a reason why Velis has liquid cooled batteries, because via this liquid cooling system, which by the way has heaters as well, okay? So it's not just the cooling, it's like a thermostatic system. We can start it at minus 40, and then this heating system will bring the temperature up to a temperature where full power can be developed, yeah? Then we have built-in protections. They are completely automatic. I will give you an example. If you start up in very cold, I don't know, Sweden, Alaska, Finland, whatever, the system will prevent the pilot to apply full power. So you can kick in throttle, but it will not come until the heater has done its job. So yes, it defines operation, but it is not linked to ambient temperature. We can fly the aeroplane in minus 40 degrees ambient temperatures because we have possibility of heating up batteries. The BMS is totally fine. The battery cells, depending on what they are, so they need a certain other operating temperature. Usually it is even higher than minus 20 that you mentioned. Batteries actually feel most at home at temperatures that humans also like. I like to say that they are a lot like marmalade. You know, when marmalade is at room temperature, it's easy to spread on a piece of bread. When it's very cold and frozen, you will not put it on a piece of bread. It's useless. So you have to somehow actively manage this temperature. And that's one of the reasons why Velis Electro has a liquid-cooled system throughout, not just the motorization, where the Alpha Electro cannot. The limit of the Alpha Electro is actually minus 5 degrees centigrade on the battery, which is translating roughly to minus 15 degrees ambient, because we can block off the airflow to the battery, like winterizing an air-cooled engine. There's different things you can do. But definitely Velis covers a much bigger envelope of temperatures, both on the bottom side as well as on the hot side.
I have a question there on the, as we talk about batteries here, you talk just about batteries. What about the, let's say the battery packs? Because you said you do the BMS, you do the inverter, you do the, you know, the final setup of the motor with a lot of parts from different manufacturers. What about the battery packing, the battery pack? You don't produce the cells, but do you do the battery packs?
I will answer like this. The only two components on the Velis Electro which are not manufactured in-house are the cockpit display and the battery cells.
Okay.
Pipistrel does the entire battery pack, all of the safety features, all of the BMS, all of the production testing equipment, every single thing. So the aeroplane is 100% designed and built in-house.
So if you, like, I know there was a time when the first electric motors came out, you also were offering a kind of firewall forward set, which could be sold to other manufacturers. Are you now offering this kind also in the certified world for other manufacturers, a whole propulsion unit from the battery to the propeller, or would it be just that the people buy the motor, but they have to do the rest themselves?
The short answer is yes. There is a slightly longer answer. The motorization part is fully covered also with the type certificate. So essentially, an OEM can put it straight on an aeroplane. They don't have to do recertification of that. They only need to do the integration test and they're done. Just like you would install a Rotax, a Lycoming, or maybe a cockpit display or a radio coming from Garmin. No difference whatsoever. There is an installation manual and you go. The batteries are similar. So the batteries on the Velis Electro are certified together with the aeroplane because there is no separate provision for a type certificate for a battery or to include it as part of the engine, TC, nor is there a TSO, which would be this mini type certification that's applied to transponders, radios, avionics, and this and that yet. Okay, so Pipistrel can deliver also the same batteries that are in the Velis Electro with EASA approved reports that people can take back to the regulator and have them reapproved as part of their OEM design. It is, however, not automatic because the regulatory system does not support a TC or a TSO for propulsion batteries yet. We are discussing with EASA how this may be in the future. In fact, we just had a workshop 14 days ago about how to certify innovative things, also like multi-core processing units, parts of the BMS, like how can you certify a BMS separately so that you can upgrade your battery cells or do different things, as well as the battery. So there is some movement, but we don't have a target date. In other words, if people use our batteries, the ones that are flying on the Velis Electro, their time to certification is also much shortened, yeah? But there is 10 to 15% more work than what they have to do installing the type certified engine, just because there is no separate certificate per se for the batteries yet. However, in terms of how the battery system works on the Velis, none of the battery system is actually outside of the battery box. So the battery box is standalone, okay? The aircraft does 0 features in terms of battery safety. So it is designed that one day when the regulation supports this, the battery itself also will live with its own either TSO or type certificate, however the regulator decides. Yeah, and of course, in this is also the foundation of battery upgradability. So if we want, and we will at a certain point in the future, offer better batteries for the Velis, we don't have to recertify everything. We literally work just on the interior of the battery enclosure.
As we talked about batteries, this is one of the most questions which is always coming around talking on electric aircraft. It is, where do you see, where is the level of the energy density at pack level at your aircraft right now? And where do you see it can be in 5 years? I know it's a little bit astrology question, but perhaps what do you expect?
5 years is quite simple. Even 10 years is relatively certain, but it is not numbers that perhaps you are expecting. So at the moment, pack level 185, 185, which is quite good, where the battery cells themselves are just above 200. Let's also put something in perspective. The Velis Electro is the first practical T-seat aeroplane that people will integrate into their training fleets. So affordability and cost of operation is important. This also means that the battery is not the highest technology battery out there at the moment. It's the battery cells that are certifiable. They have to have certain properties. It's a too long discussion for now, but it also have to have some affordable cost. There are battery cells out there which are now touching 300 watt-hours per kilo, but they are good for a few hundred cycles, not even close to 1,000 cycles or so. And they are much more expensive per kilowatt hour. So they don't outweigh the affordability equation. That's one thing. And then the perspective, I think a realistic assumption is 50% in 10 years, where about half of that, or a little bit less than half of that, will be available 5 years from today. When I say available, means available to the customers. So I'm talking about a 20 to a 25% increase over today. Yeah, because to certify a battery, we identified that we need about 1.5 years from when the technology is available. I'll just put things in perspective. Only the aging test, which then is able to forecast the number of cycles and all of these things that people are interested in, is at minimum 9 months, just that. And you cannot accelerate it. This is basically testing 24/7, day after day. So that's kind of my answer.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Yep, and if you don't mind, because as we are talking about battery, is the 180 kilowatt per hour, watts per hour pack level density, is the Velis the current battery density, or can you disclose the battery density of the Velis?
Yeah, this is the Velis, 185 on a pack level. Yes.
Yeah, understood. And also at the website, at the Velis website, it does not show the battery kilowatt hours. So can you disclose how many kilowatt hours in Velis?
Yes, actually it is in the type certification data sheet.
Okay, thank you.
I will tell you, it's 24 hours when it's 24 kilowatt hours when it is new, and 22 when it is old.
Okay.
That's very precise. Thank you.
As we are
margins are not big, huh? So we have
as we are at the aircraft, right at the aircraft at the Velis now. One question which is very from our German readership. Will there also be an Electro Alpha going to Germany, or will you certify a Velis type of aircraft in the ultralight category with 600 kilograms?
So I will purely technically this remains under the discussion, because the German regulation has an empty weight upper limit of 400 kg. And the Velis is a little bit above that because of all the safety provisions for type certified airplanes. So we are discussing what of the features we can realistically not include in a microlight class aeroplane without sacrificing overall safety. And it has to do with the environment where it flies and the usability ratings and maybe less cycles on a battery, different things, okay? So that the product would actually be noticeably cheaper, because this is what people actually expect, and it's not a trivial thing. Many things are connected to one another, so I would not expect that this product launches anytime soon. We do, however, have what we call Alpha Electro LC, liquid cooled, which marries the motorization of the Alpha Electro, which is not as elaborate, with all the rest of the systems, the battery and the cockpit and so on, of the Velis for out of EASA light sport categories for 600 kg markets like Australia, South Africa, Brazil, and so on. And as you know, America is still tough, but we also have some open discussions there, and we will see how it goes without commitments at the moment. So there is now 3 tiers of similar 2-seat trainer or recreational aeroplanes. There's the Alpha Electro, as you know it, all air-cooled components. There is the Alpha Electro LC, which is very close to the Velis. There is Velis as a type certified aeroplane, which can be used commercially and for EASA level private pilot and commercial pilot license trainings.
And so there is it's up to now, it has not decided yet which will be the aircraft which will come as ultralight to Germany. Did I get this? Okay.
I would say that the Velis Electro is actually price-wise a very attractive product. For what you get, considering that you get basically the fuel for the lifetime of the battery TBO, it's cheaper than many microlights on the German market today.
No, this is clear, but you know, we have a lot of ultralight schools, microlight schools, which have to fly from microlight airfields and have to fly with microlight aircraft, and especially when they want to do a microlight license, as we still have the 2 worlds which are not mixing totally. So there is still the question from or people who have a microlight license who wants to fly an electric aircraft. They want to know when a microlight electric aircraft will be available.
So it may happen that this offering comes from us. It may happen that another airframer offers our propulsion components in their product that addresses this market. You know, so Pipistrel is not anymore with the Velis TC is not anymore just a maker of aeroplanes. It's also a maker of propulsion sets. So we are looking at this panorama differently than before.
Okay. As we talked about the aircraft, now the question would go to the next category of aircraft. First, from the motor side, as it said that electric motors are, or the whole system is better scalable than in just a combustion engine or in a turbine. Have you already the next plan for the next larger, more powerful motor? And second, what will be the next aircraft in which we will see Pipistrel electric powered, so a larger aircraft, not the same like microlight, 600 kilograms.
So it's not a secret that under MAHEPA as the research projects, there are also components being developed. We are doing it in partnership, not alone. Compact Dynamics out of the Munich, let's say, suburbs, Hamburg, They are the development partner who came up with the motor for the Pantera hybrid, as well as potentially later Pantera Electro as the battery technology catches up.
Yeah.
Which is a 300 kilowatt unit.
Mm-hmm.
So this unit was already ground tested, and it has gone through initial qualification, and it is set to fly this year on the Pantera hybrid prototype. So this is the next step.
So it's more like, so it will not, so it will be this motor flying in the Pantera hybrid next, and not a scaled up, this kind of MRAX or Pipistrel motor like it is the E811, which was certified now.
Correct.
Okay. Then you have any time schedule, or what is your plans? When do you think the first hybrid electric Pantera can be certified, and when do you think the first fully electric Pantera will fly?
Yeah, so there is the market situation which says as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So reasonably, with technological maturity in hybrids, I would say 2023 to 2024 could be when we see a type certificate. Now, the regulatory side is catching up, so there is no gaps there. It could be done today. In fact, the question is really how affordable would this product be today versus 2024? Mm-hmm. And this is a major factor of adoption. You know, yes, you do have people who are enthusiasts and they will buy it for whatever price. But then you have people who are either incentivized because of the, let's call it societal reasons or community reasons, like noise on the airports, like eco-taxing, you know, like taxes for CO2 or other things. And then there is people who are looking into the product purely from a commercial reason. And only when these three connect, there is a large enough customer base to justify a type certification. Also, Velis Electro was similar. The regulatory side, in theory, supported type certifying this vehicle around late 2018. And we were here in 2020 for a reason, because batteries between 2018 and 2020 became almost 40% cheaper. And there is factors in the hybrids as well, which are indicating a lower or more lucrative pricing in the next years. So we are trying to closely watch what these segments are coming up with, and it's dependent on other industries, not automotive. There's other sectors as well. And that's when we pull the trigger. We will fly the prototype this year. You have to know that nobody has flown a high power hybrid. So maybe there is things which we missed. It is still a development program. But let's say that we are satisfied with what we fly this year, then 2023 to 2024 is, I think, when the technological paths and the costs align with customers' expectations and the regulatory side.
On the hybrid project, what is the combustion engine which is used in there?
So it's the most powerful Rotax 4-cylinder.
Okay, and is this so this is then like in the Tecnam project, it's a parallel hybrid?
Incorrect. Pantera hybrid is a serial hybrid.
Okay.
So it can take off also on battery powered alone. Yeah? So the electric motorization is not a booster. It is in fact the driver of the propeller. So think of it as a Velis Electro, where one battery pack is substituted by a generator. This is basically what it is.
And so the Rotax is a generator?
Correct. The Rotax is purely a generator. It is not connected to the propeller. In fact, as an interesting fact, it is mounted in the opposite direction of flight. Yeah? So it is not pointing forward, it is in fact pointing backwards, because this gets some better packaging options.
Okay, so we have the next generation, which would be the 4-seater. What about the electric aircraft? You say, when do you think, you said like market-wise, you have to wait until the components and the market gets together, but technology-wise, when do you think you could make a Pantera which can fly 2.5 hours?
On battery power alone?
Yeah.
Not before 2025.
Okay. And now we get to the next step, which would be the next larger generation. Pipistrel also showed the 19-seater project. First, is there anything in between the 4-seater Pantera and the 19-seater project, which you have on the schedule, which you can disclose right now?
It will be disclosed in a few weeks.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
Okay, so keep us updated and we will keep you updated.
Let me tell you this, Willie. I think you will be surprised to learn what is in between, because it's not exactly expected. Something that needs to be understood very well is that to jump in size, inside part 23, you don't necessarily need a bigger motorization.
Yes.
You can use more of them.
Right.
So it creates different options, and in that sense, it may also be more straightforward for an OEM to jump, let's say, from 4 straight to 19, instead of going 4, 6, 8, 12, what could have been the previous path, because the scale up of the aeroplanes before electrification was really connected to the scale up of the powertrain itself. Like you said, like a bigger MRAX or a bigger 811. It's not the case anymore. And this is the interesting paradigm shift.
But there are still some borders, like if you say part 23 class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, if you have part 23 2, then you can't do more than 8 passengers, 8 packs plus crew.
So I was also part of the standardization team that developed ASTM standards for the new part 23. And in fact, the biggest difference is between level 2 and level 3. So
yes.
for an OEM, it makes sense also on the certification side to jump either from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 4.
Okay.
Because the cost of certifying a product in level 3 or in level 4, just the certification itself is maybe 20% apart. Not much different. Huh?
And between part 22 and 24, between part 2 and part 4, where would you see the margin there?
It's about a factor of 3 in cost.
Yes, research development, certification, and prototyping.
Commuters question side. So you say there will come some new products. We will be surprised. Looking at the 19-seater, the 19-seater is planned to be first a hybrid, when I understand right.
So when you grow the aeroplane size, one thing that becomes quite apparent is that you cannot grow it forever on battery power alone.
Right.
So it becomes a certain kind of a hybrid around 6 to 8 seats in size, for some very interesting reasons. One of them, of course, is that the aeroplane gets quite big, and you may be hitting the upper limit of what is part 23 today, depending on the mission duration that you choose. But if you have a sizable aeroplane, then you don't fly just half an hour. Maybe you want to do 1.5, 2 hours because of reserves, because of different things, just depending on what is the business case, right? We have, I mean, you've seen the e-Beaver flying in Canada. That's an interesting case of water planes that do not require long flight times, but that's just one of them. It's not a widespread operation. What I'm saying is that you basically have a choice. You go to a very clean hybrid, which is based on hydrogen, or you do different things with turbine-based solutions. Internal combustion relatively quickly eliminates itself as an option because of the weight. Turbines are just much lighter for the output power. And although they are typically more fuel hungry, they are still the better outcome on the whole aeroplane level and also from the emissions standpoint. But zero emission is what Pipistrel wants to do. So our 19-seat concepts, every single one of them, there's 6 at the moment, competing with one another for different missions and cost effectiveness, are hydrogen-based systems. So some of them have the opportunity to take off from very short runways, give or take 800-meter strips. So the takeoff distance required is 600 to 800 meters. They have installed powers of around 2 megawatts, where approximately half of this will come from a hydrogen fuel cell. So we did have some experience flying with fuel cells, courtesy of the collaboration with the German Aerospace Center in 2016. We will fly again their aeroplane. Pipistrel will be conducting the flight test campaign on the newly integrated DLR powertrain this year. So there will be more and more lessons learned on course to hydrogen. And real flight test data is something that truly helps to remove the mystery of what the performance of these airplanes can be or cannot be. So yes, it is a hybrid, and what we have on our radar exclusively is fuel cell-based systems, hydrogen power hybrids with battery alongside to do very interesting things, completely zero emission. And this also means much longer range, and it also means quick turnaround times. This is also one of the parameters that basically eliminates the use of the battery on larger aeroplanes designed to carry passengers, because the charging times become too long, not because of the battery, but because of the infrastructure. It is just very difficult to bring a strong enough cable, to use very plain English, to an airport where these machines would operate, and this becomes a constraint. So the battery, in fact, could take much quicker charging times, but you simply don't get enough electricity to where you need to charge. So you get turnaround times which are upwards of 1 hour, possibly even 2 hours. And that's most definitely not acceptable for a business case, which effectively looks for turnaround times in the order of 10, 20, at most 30 minutes. Pipistrel is working with Avinor. As you know, Avinor is flying airplanes, will continue to fly our airplanes. They were very clear in what regional airline traffic requirements would be for the Norwegian context, with the shorter distances and zero emission travel. And I think other operators will not be much different, because once you have an aeroplane as a tool for air service of any kind, cargo, passengers, it does not want to be on the ground. You want to utilize it, you want to capitalize it, so it has to spend much more time flying than being on the ground, either in charging or maintenance or both. So this is extremely important.
Mm-hmm. One thing we may exclude this from the recording, because like when there was a kickoff in Norway, there was a project where Ivo talked me about it, that perhaps flying with the Pantera High 4 over the Atlantic. So it's just off the record question. Is this still on the scope, and are you still planning such things?
So Pipistrel does not own the hydrogen powered aeroplane. We operate it.
Yes.
I can say that the aeroplane is definitely capable to fly over the Atlantic in terms of endurance and reliability. We know that at that time, the aeroplane owner was also considering this.
Yes.
I'm not sure if they are considering this still, because I know that they are trying to accelerate the maturation of the hydrogen fuel cell powertrain. So maybe they will jump onto a liquid hydrogen based system as next, and not spend time flying over the ocean. I mean, it's a nice event, but it takes a lot of time to prepare and execute. So it's really their choice. Lately, I have not heard any discussions around that.
So it mainly, I have to ask Carlo.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll do so. Great.
But I can definitely confirm that in terms of the range and speed and robustness, and also, by the way, the airplane has full IFR avionics, and they were installed for a reason. So the avionics in those airplanes are definitely not what you would have just on a research prototype.
Okay. So coming back to the e-commuters, when would you expect? Like you said, okay, your goal is fuel cell, your goal is zero emission. When do you expect having a zero emission fuel cell aircraft by Pipistrel, just like a year?
In service.
First prototype flying first and then in service.
So the demonstrator flights are at the moment scheduled for 2027 or 2028.
Mm-hmm.
It is linked to some technology maturation on medium temperature fuel cells.
Okay.
That's the term. And then you should add 4 to 5 years for maturation and certification, unless this becomes a strategic European priority, yeah, where Pipistrel could be joined with other OEMs, each taking its part in the development, so that this becomes a European, a semi-European, or a joint project, not just a Pipistrel-driven project.
Mm-hmm.
This could accelerate it by 2 to 4 years, because you know yourself, development goes at the speed of cash, and this is not a simple project.
Are there, as you have strong relationships to China, are there anything of this development project where there could be Chinese funding helping this?
So Ivo is shaking his head. We see, so the whole aeroplane depends on a slightly different fuel cell technology than what is utilized in the rest of the mobility today. Okay. China is making huge investments on low temperature PEM fuel cells, yeah, which are fantastic for aeroplanes, let's say up to 8-10 seats or so. Then the heat rejection becomes an issue. So in other words, the cooling system using today's technology, or technology that China is very strongly investing into for the ground infrastructure, would not enable a 19-seater, or it would be very big, meaning not fitting small runways. So you could only operate it on München International or Frankfurt International. So again, you did not create something very useful of a machine. And that is why we don't see immediate funding opportunities from China. Let's say Pipistrel is interested in working with smart capital, meaning that if we partner with somebody, it's not just money, it's also certain technical solutions, so that the whole project is accelerated and the complete solution is better than what Pipistrel may do just on our own.
You mentioned right before that there are several prototypes of the 19-seater at the moment competing in your team. Is it possible to disclose any designs of this?
Yeah, we have actually disclosed one semi-publicly. I will send you an image of it after this recording.
Okay, great. So now I think we have about 5 minutes left. Let's perhaps go a little bit to eVTOL, and then we may continue this talk, as it's so interesting, at some other time. On the eVTOL side, like when we now come from the fuel cell, so are you looking to this kind of propulsion system also for the VTOL?
Yes and no. So obviously, from the weight perspective, it's a more difficult undertaking than doing a conventional takeoff. Let's say fuel cell driven machine. So there is also another thing. In the eVTOL segment, there is like 2 directions that make sense at the moment, or that have identified customers, and Pipistrel is present in both. So one is the air taxi mission, where the range of the machine does not have to be very long, because the idea is that these eVTOLs, the air taxis, are effectively time machines, offsetting for traffic jams, or bringing people across urban centers. And urban centers have a predictable size, or diameter. Almost the biggest one in Los Angeles is some 80 kilometers across, 80 to 90. And it is possible to do that with batteries, even with batteries of today. And this effectively creates the cheapest way of flying, just because the aircraft doesn't have the complexity of a hybrid, because as soon as you start talking a hybrid, you have batteries and something else. So if you have just batteries, that's definitely better from the operating cost perspective, and also from the certification perspective. It is more straightforward since you certify one power source and not two, or even combinations of those two. It's a similar case than when you discuss VTOLs that are lift plus cruise, or just multicopters, or tilt rotors. So you kind of separate the functions. On the other side, you have VTOLs for logistics and cargo delivery, or military use, let's say. Those have to go really long distance. So in the factor of 5 to 10 more than in the city centers. So you are talking 2, 3, 4, 500 kilometers, perhaps, as they are designed to distribute cargo or goods into areas where there is no infrastructure. Yeah? But if there's no infrastructure, it also means that it's much harder to get hydrogen there. Mm-hmm. So for some foreseeable future, just because infrastructure isn't present there, the solutions may be more conventional in terms of hybridization than what you would see in a CTOL 19-seater, since the 19-seater has more predictable ways of where it operates. The whole point of a VTOL is it can go everywhere. That's the whole point. So it doesn't go airport to airport, it goes from somewhere to somewhere else. And if you condition this mission by having to install hydrogen fuel stations in those places, you have kind of negated the whole ideology of freedom that eVTOL brings. So at the moment, we do not have active considerations to use hydrogen-based propulsion on eVTOLs. Okay, but we see it as a fantastic zero-emission option for CVTOLs.
Okay.
Sorry, for conventional.
As you mentioned, cargo. How strong? Because it seems to be that the whole thing has shifted a little bit from air taxi into cargo, a little bit on priorities of many manufacturers. So how strong are the ambitions of Pipistrel Vertical Solutions?
Let me answer like this. Let's see in 2 weeks.
Okay, so this is also announced in 2 weeks. Okay.
No, I will continue that.
Yeah.
So we have 2 eVTOL development directions open. They are vehicles which are more or less the same in the systems architecture standpoint. So the vehicles, one is for cargo, the other one is an air taxi. They are both octacopters, and they are both lift plus cruise configurations. They look entirely different. Okay, so don't expect a smaller and a bigger vehicle. But from the systemic standpoint and the automatic flight control system and everything that needs to make the vehicle reliable, motorization, batteries, safety, data links, they are the same aeroplane. Okay, so we definitely wish to utilize our cargo delivery eVTOL, which is a large vehicle. It's comparable to a flying truck, not to like an Amazon package delivery vehicle, and you will see. It is also a test bed for everything that will be needed on an air taxi vehicle at even much higher reliability. Mm-hmm. So it's an intermediate step, and it is a product on its own.
And it will come in, and you will announce something on this in 2 weeks.
That's what I said before.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, just for me to know, will there be some official, some online press conference, or how do you plan this?
So there will be a series of events. There will be a press release and a website, and there will be a press kit available. We will then have exclusive one-on-one sessions with prospective operators and maybe investors, because we want to give them the exclusive preview before we have a more public press-rated press conference, which we want to target to September-October timeframe. Yep. The reason is that this, and this is off the record. Yep. The segment is yet trying to figure out what is the optimal solution on the vehicle. From the cargo operator standpoint, you know, how cargo arrives, how is it loaded, how is it packaged, is it a pallet, is it a box, is it a removable box, what is it, you know? So we wish to spend some time with prospective operators to gather their feedback before we really freeze the ultra detailed design. And that is when we also are ready to speak with the members of the press and more publicly, because we'll have a much better idea to answer the questions such as, and how do you load it? And how does it do that? And how does it do this? We have certain concepts of operations worked out, and those will be presented on the website, but we anticipate to see many more from people who are in the segment and have not yet had direct exposure to the vehicle look and feel. But you will be surprised. It's a very cool vehicle.
Okay, I'm definitely looking forward. So really let me know in advance that we can also announce it. And I think I already stole more of your time, which was planned, because you said you have the next one at 4 o'clock. So yeah, I will look into it. I will see how I can cut it. And then I'll send you a link where you can download the file, and would appreciate if we then perhaps could continue at one or the other end. Yeah, but sure. I think the maximum length for such a recording to put online is anyway half an hour. Nobody's watching 2 hours in one step.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I owe you the rendering of the 19-seater, yep. one of the concepts, okay? So okay. It's not, be very careful. Don't announce this as this is what Pipistrel is building. It's what Pipistrel could be building. And the reason why we have at the moment 6 concepts, and there will be more coming, is because we are trying to figure out how the aeroplane changes if the mission changes. Mm-hmm. You know? How is it different if it has to fly just between small airports? Or it has to fly small airport to big airport? Or how is it different if it can take hydrogen only once per day, like overnight? And then it has to fly all day on that charge. So it has to have like several thousands of kilometers range or several hundreds. So that is what we are still looking into, but I think you will like the imagery. It's interesting.
Okay, how strong are the ambitions of Pipistrel Vertical Solutions?
Let me answer like this. Let's see in 2 weeks.
Okay, so this is also announced in 2 weeks. Okay.
No, I will continue that.
Yeah.
So we have 2 eVTOL development directions open. They are vehicles which are more or less the same in the systems architecture standpoint. So the vehicles, one is for cargo, the other one is an air taxi. They are both octacopters, and they are both lift plus cruise configurations. They look entirely different, okay? So don't expect a smaller and a bigger vehicle. But from the systemic standpoint and the automatic flight control system and everything that needs to make the vehicle reliable, motorization, batteries, safety, data links, they are the same aeroplane, okay? So we definitely wish to utilize our cargo delivery eVTOL, which is a large vehicle. It's comparable to a flying truck, not to like an Amazon package delivery vehicle, and you will see. It is also a test bed for everything that will be needed on an air taxi vehicle at even much higher reliability. Mm. So it's an intermediate step, and it is a product on its own.
And it will come in, and you will announce something on this in 2 weeks.
That's what I said before.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, just for me to know, will there be some some online press conference, or how do you plan this?
So there will be a series of events. There will be a press release and a website, and there will be a press kit available. We will then have exclusive one-on-one sessions with prospective operators and maybe investors. Mm-hmm. Because we want to give them the exclusive preview before we have a more public press-rated press conference, mm-hmm. which we want to target to September-October timeframe. Yeah. The reason is that you know, this, and this is off the record. Yeah. The segment is yet trying to figure out what is the optimal solution on the vehicle. from the cargo operator standpoint. You know, how cargo arrives, how is it loaded, how is it packaged? Is it a pallet? Is it a box? Is it a removable box? What is it? You know, so we wish to spend some time with prospective operators to gather their feedback before we really freeze the ultra detailed design. And that is when we also are ready to speak with the members of the press and more publicly, because we'll have a much better idea to answer the questions such as, and how do you load it? And how does it do that? And how does it do this? We have certain concepts of operations worked out, and those will be presented on the website, but we anticipate to see many more from people who are in the segment and have not yet had direct exposure to the vehicle look and feel. But you will be surprised. It's a very cool vehicle.
Okay, I'm definitely looking forward. So really let me know in advance that we can also announce it. And I think I already stole more of your time, which was planned, because you said you have the next one at 4 o'clock. So yeah, I will look into it. I will see how I can cut it. And then I'll send you a link where you can download the file, and would appreciate if we then perhaps could continue at one or the other end. Yeah, but sure. I think the maximum length for such a recording to put online is anyway half an hour. Nobody's watching 2 hours in one step.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I owe you the rendering of the 19-seater, yep. one of the concepts, okay? So it's not, be very careful. Don't announce this as this is what Pipistrel is building. It's what Pipistrel could be building. And the reason why we have at the moment 6 concepts, and there will be more coming, is because we are trying to figure out how the aeroplane changes if the mission changes. Mm-hmm. You know? How is it different if it has to fly just between small airports? Or it has to fly small airport to big airport? Or how is it different if it can take hydrogen only once per day, like overnight? And then it has to fly all day on that charge. So it has to have like several thousands of kilometers range or several hundreds. So that is what we are still looking into, but I think you will like the imagery. It's interesting.
Okay, good. Then thanks, Tine. Thanks, Ivo.